Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to assemble the laced key fob from Real Leather Crafts. As a bonus, I'm also going to show you a couple different tooling options using just a few simple tools from the Explore Leathercraft Kit. So the first thing we're going to do here, we're going to set our extra parts aside and look at our tooling options. So this is veg tan leather that we're tooling on. That's going to be leather that'll actually take an impression of our tools. And the first thing we got to do is case the leather. Now that's just a fancy word for meaning getting your moisture content right in there. So take a little sponge with water on it, wet that down. You can see it takes just a second for that to absorb in. So we're going to let that sit, make sure that water absorbs down in there. And we don't have to soak it all the way through or anything. That's just some that gets there from the table surface there when we got a little extra water. But now we're going to look at some options here. So let's start with this option that we're looking at. We're going to run a border around there and then run some crosshatch in between. So starting with this tool here, this is the smaller camouflage tool. We're going to put this right down here at the bottom. So kind of centering those bottom holes there. And you can see I stayed just a little bit away from those holes because that's going to be where our lace runs through, so we want to create that border there. Now I'm going to start working my way around here. Now I'm simply watching my spacing between each tool that I put down there. I'm holding that tool. You notice I have 3 fingers on this side and my thumb there. Keeping that ring finger down towards the base is really going to help your tool control. I'm keeping that tool straight up and down as I hit it. It's going to give us that full impression of our stamp there that we're after. Get up to that side, and now we're going to stop, and I'm going to rotate around and work the other way. Again, looking at that same spacing between our stamps. I'm hitting with even pressure. Every time I hit, I want to hit each stamp the same. That's going to get us our even burnishing. Another fancy word just for the darker color that we're getting from our stamping there. And that comes from having that moisture content right in the leather. If we were trying to do that on dry leather, we wouldn't get that nice dark look. It wouldn't take the impression like it does. That's why it's important to wet that down first. So now I'm going to set that tool aside and we'll get out our swivel knife. Now it's called a swivel knife because it swivels on top there. So that's where I'm going to put my forefinger at. Then I'm going to use my middle finger and my thumb on what's called the barrel of that knife. My ring finger, I like keeping right down there close to that blade to help with some control. Now we're not doing curved lines here. We're just going to run straight lines. So I'm kind of locking my wrist and pulling that knife. But we're going to start down here. I'm just going to run crossways, but pulling that knife nice and straight. I look at the width of that stamp is going to be a good guide for me to make sure we're running those lines parallel and even. Now I'm going to turn that and we'll start working our way down the other way. Gives kind of a neat crosshatch look in there with a border stamp, kind of ties that together. Again, a couple simple tools real quick. I'm going to show you another pattern on the other side. So let's take what's called our veiner first. This tool here, I'm going to start this one up at this side. Let's put it right up between those first 2 lace holes. We're going to turn that and work our way around here. Again, give myself a little bit of spacing off of those lace holes. And just a little space in between each one there. It's going to get a nice clean look to that. Come around to this other side. Again, looking at that spacing off of those. And holding this tool straight up and down is going to get that nice even impression that we're after. Now that we have that around there, I'm going to go to our cedar. It's a small little round punch here. And let's put that on the outside of every one of these veiners. Now you can have fun and create all sorts of patterns with simple stamps like this. Now you could do a cross hatch in the middle there. You could add an initial if you had some letter stamps, or we're going to use our pear shader, this little kind of rounded shading tool, and just add some texture in here. So I'm kind of going different directions, filling up space, just creating a little bit of, not an exact geometric pattern in there, but really just some texturing to the center of that. Now at this point, we'd let that dry. If you were going to put any finish on there, you could put a stain or leather finish. If you do have the Explore kit, it comes with a finish that you would put on now before we go to lacing this together. But we're not going to put a finish on this. I'm going to leave a natural finish like we did on this one, and we're going to get that prepped while it's still a little bit wet here. I'm just going to roll that to slip that ring in there. That way we know we can flatten that back out and our ring's set in place. Now it's time to prep our lace. Your lace comes with a needle actually rubber banded in there. So this is a lacing needle. It has prongs on this side that we can put that lace into, and this is going to really help things. But we need to figure out what we got going here for lace. Now these kits come with lots of extra lace, which is great, but we don't need all of that lace. So I'm going to go ahead and actually just fold this in half, come around to this end, and I'm going to cut that simply using my box knife here. This is actually a knife I use for a ton of my leather work. I love just a plain old box knife. Now on the end of that lace, we need to bevel that off just a little bit. It's going to make things work easier. So using that knife, I'm just going to shave that little bit off there. You can see that hanging on there. So that gives us kind of a tapered end to that. Now with our needle, I just kind of use my fingernail to help open that up. Our lace can shove right in there. And it has those little prongs on there that are going to help that lace stay in there. So I'm just going to use my knife, lay that on there. That way that's held in there good. One thing I like to do too, sometimes there's that extra edge on there because the lace is just a touch wider than that needle. I'm just going to shave that little corner off. Now it's going to pull through there really nice and simple. Okay, we're going to take our keychain, fold that in half so that way we're getting those holes lined up there. I'm going to start actually on the inside here. Okay, I'm going to start the top hole up closest to that ring. Now that lace is upside down, so I have the smooth part showing on the outside there. So we're going to pull that through all the way until we have about an inch or so hanging out there. Well, maybe a little bit longer than an inch. I'm going to kind of fold that over and let this sit right on the inside here. Now always make sure that we don't have twists in that lace. I'm going to come back over the edge right through that top hole And on the inside, we got to go through the same hole we went through the first time. Okay, you can see that coming through that same hole. We'll work that through, pulling that down, making sure there's no twist as we come around here. Our little tail, keep that tucked in there, and then we can pull this snug. I'm going to kind of pinch together right here as I pull that and make sure we're snug down really nice and tight. Again, keeping twists out of there. I'm going to come back and go through our next hole. Snugging that down, pinching together as we go. We're coming around each time, keeping the smooth side of that lace out, making sure the twists are out of that, pulling down snug. So we're going to keep following that pattern around, very repetitive at this point, until we get back to this other side. And I'm going to come back when we have a few holes left to go and tell you how we're going to finish this up. Now that we're back around to this side, we have 3 holes left here. When I come through here, I want to leave a little bit of a loop here. Okay, I'm going to leave that fairly big so I can still get a hold of it. I'm going to come around to our next one just like we've been doing, except for I'm not pulling this tight yet here. Now we come back around there. Okay, so we have all of our loops just like we would, but they're loose so I can get a hold of them later. This next time when we come back around, I'm going to go through our first hole again, but I'm only going through the top layer. On the inside, what I want to do is come underneath these loops and out here. So having that lacing needle makes that a whole lot easier. So we go in through the top layer only, and then in through the center. We're going to come out underneath those last couple laces. Now once I have that through, we need to start working this back around. Again, I didn't pull that tight either. I'm going to go back here to where we first started running these loose, and I can tuck that tail down in there and begin to pull these other ones tight. Now when this comes around, we can come back to that tail and it will pull right down through there. Now all those lacings have essentially tied that back together so it will hold. And we have this tail that's sticking out. I don't want to leave that hanging out. I'm going to come back to that knife, and right at the edge of that lace, I'm going to carefully cut that end off. So now that tail tucks down in between there and we don't see it. A laced key fob with 2 different tooling options, and now you're capable of doing that. Just think of all the other projects that you're going to be able to lace together using those same skills.